Hi everyone, as you get to watch me kind of make sure my phone doesn't fall. So I wanted to touch base on that idea of clustering. I had mentioned, Cynthia wrote to me and said, I'm working on this project on what can I do with the ideas in this class to further that project. And so one idea that I mentioned, and I said I will make a video of this, but not right after I'm done running, so until we've been together for a week, is that idea of going deeper and deeper into the clustering. So I wanted to show you what that looks like. So for example, say I was going to cluster on water. And so I put water in here, and then I come and I do, all of these things, and I'm clustering, and I'm clustering, and I'm clustering, and then I keep going, and one of the things, and Lindy and I were talking about this in one of the conversations, is one of the, sometimes people think of clustering as mind mapping. And to me, they're two very different things. Mind mapping is organized, prescribed, whereas clustering is you just let yourself go wild. You let yourself go wherever the ideas take you and trust. And so to me, those are two very different experiences. So I was really thankful that Lindy shared that. But so you're clustering, and you're just kind of going. And even if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea how this relates to water, trust yourself and just let it go. So then, so here's like your first cluster. And at some point, and there's only kind of like an intuitive feeling, that's the only way I can describe it, is I'll be thinking, usually, well, almost always, when I sit down and do this, I have no idea what I'm going to write about. I mean, I may have an idea of a theme, but as far as what I'm actually going to write, not a clue. And so I'll start, but then I just kind of trust, and I just kind of go wherever it takes me. And at some point in this, there'll be like this feeling of, that's it. That's the idea. And at that point, that's when I'll start writing narrative. Whether it's longhand or in the computer, do whatever works best for you. I love longhand, so that's what I do. But it's just this energy shift where all of a sudden I'll be out here, and it might be right here. It might be one of the first things that I wrote. It might be way over here. You never know, but trust whatever that feeling is. And in that moment, and usually in that moment also, I'll see, I see how this all fits together now. I didn't before. And what felt maybe very disorganized or disconnected, now I understand where it's going. It's in that moment that then I'll start to write out, narrative. And I'll start to write out whether it's an essay, whether it's a chapter, whether it's, whatever it is. Now that idea of going deeper and deeper. So we've got this. So we've got the cluster. We've got the narrative. But we want to go deeper into those ideas. So then I'll just look at this. And I tend to look at this more than the written for this part. And I will trust whatever I feel like as far as going deeper into that idea. And it may be like right here. And so maybe this says, I don't know, fluidity or fluid. So then I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it in the middle of a piece of paper, just like this. And I'm going to go through the whole thing all over again and just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. So now I'm doing this to fluid. When I feel that moment to stop and write, I'm going to stop and write narrative. And then from this, I'm going to choose, okay, what do I want to go deeper into? Maybe it's this. And I'm going to do the same thing on the next piece of paper, right over here. This is what I meant by going deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And wow, do you come up with some surprises. I did this a lot when writing, well, I do it always when writing essays. I also did it a lot when writing the novel because I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen in the chapter. I kind of knew holistically, but as far as like the details on what people were going to be doing, and then these awesome wild surprises would come in, or I would figure out, oh, that's where that fits in. But I have like reams of this from doing this for the novel. So I wanted to make sure and follow up on that. And then a couple other things. At the end of this, you'll have what our dear Annie Lamott, and this is her bird by bird instructions on life. This is when I went to see her at some point in California. She refers to this as a shitty first draft. And I also am the biggest believer in shitty first drafts. So I'm just going to read you a little bit that what she writes about shitty first drafts. And then I'll go ahead and I'll include this in our week 1 so you have the reading of it as well. But I want to just kind of read it to you, her thoughts on shitty first drafts. Now, practically even better news than anything is the idea of shitty first drafts. All good writers write them. This is how they end up with good second drafts and terrific third drafts. People tend to look at successful writers who are getting their books published and maybe even doing well financially, and think that they sit down at their desks every morning feeling like $1 million, feeling great about who they are and how much talent they have and what a great story they have to tell, that they take a few deep breaths, push back their sleeves, roll their necks a few times to get the cricks out, and dive in, typing fully formed passages as fast as a court reporter. But this is just the fantasy of the uninitiated. I know some very great writers you love, who write beautifully and have made a great deal of money, and not one of them sits down routinely feeling wildly enthusiastic and confident. Not one of them writes elegant first drafts. All right, one of them does, but we do not like her very much. We do not think she has a rich inner life, or that God likes her, or can even stand her. Although, when I mentioned this to my priest friend Tom, he said you can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. Very few writers really know what they're doing until they've done it, nor do they go about their business feeling dewy and thrilled. They do not type a few stiff warm-up sentences and then find themselves bounding along like huskies across the snow. One writer I know tells me that he sits down every morning and says to himself nicely, "It's not like you don't have a choice, because you do. You can either type or kill yourself." We all often feel like we're pulling teeth, even those writers whose prose ends up being the most natural and fluid. The right words and sentences just do not come pouring out like ticker tape most of the time. Now, Muriel Spark is said to have felt that she was taking dictation from God every morning, sitting there, one supposes, plugged into a dictaphone, typing away, humming. But this is a very hostile and aggressive position. One might hope for bad things to rain down on a person like that. For me and most other writers I know, writing is not rapturous. In fact, the only way I can get anything written at all is to write really, really shitty first drafts. The first draft is the child's draft, where you let it all pour out and then let it romp all over the place, knowing that no one is going to see it and that you can shape it later. You just let this childlike part of you channel whatever voices and visions come through and onto the page. If one of those characters wants to say, "Well, so what, Mr. Poopy Pants?" you let her. No one is going to see it. If the kid wants to get into a really sentimental, weepy, emotional territory, you let him. Just get it all down on the paper, because there may be something great in those 6 crazy pages that you would never have gotten to by any more rational grown-up means. There may be something in the very last line of the very last paragraph on page 6 that you love. That is so beautiful or wild that you now know what you're supposed to be writing